Welcome back, people. It is the first weekend in August. The summer is winding down. And lo and behold, what do we have? An actual action-filled, comedy-filled, fun, theatrical movie to watch. This movie has everything. It has got stars. It has got comedy. It has got crazy amounts of references. And what is this movie, might you ask? It is none other than Bullet Train, the movie that apparently just the regular movie-going populace is just the type of movie, I should say, that the regular movie-going, that the critic world is just seemingly given up on. I'm joined by Luke of Luke Reviews and Kristen of Ms.Filmingo. Guys, happy to have you here. Are you ready to review Bullet Train?
Of course, let's do it.
Absolutely. I've been ready
Let's
for
hop
2
on the
years.
bullet train.
Let's try to hop on the Bullet Train. All of this and more on today's episode of the Talking TV podcast. What's up, guys? I'm super happy to have you both here. You two have probably become two of my favorite guests that I've had on in the last year in general, as I've been trying to incorporate some of the YouTube community that we formed back in 2020 back into the world of podcasting. And we have to review here something that I didn't think that it was possible for us to get anymore, which is an actual fun-filled, crazy action movie. It is called Bullet Train. It has got a gigantic cast. It's from one of the directors of John Wick, David Leitch. And before we actually get into the movie, I wanted to poke your guys' brains a little bit about something that is kind of a phenomenon in the sense of where it feels like it's been so long since we've gotten one of these, and that is kind of a lackluster movie summer. I mean, I feel like that's kind of to be expected just given that we're still kind of making a bounce back from the pandemic, but I feel like people kind of underrated last summer as far as where even though the box office was kind of down and we were still in this weird spot coming out of the pandemic and not really sure what movies were doing well at the box office, we still got some pretty, like, I would say fun movies to watch in theaters. You know, we got the 9 Fast and Furious, we got Black Widow obviously in theaters, we got a couple of interesting indie movies, and it just feels like for the most part this summer, with the exception of a few notable differences, has kind of been lackluster. So I just wanted your guys' thoughts on just this summer overall in general for movies.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly what you just said. I think it's been a hard summer. I think we were like so hyped up for some of these movies that they just ended up either just mostly satisfying or just ended up being ultimately disappointing for most audiences. I mean, like audiences like me, you know, we were all looking forward to like Jurassic World's Dominion, and I was not a fan of that. And it just felt like there was nothing worthy of an action movie to go to put my money towards anything for that this summer. I mean, last year we got stuff like the Suicide Squad, and I thought that was perfect for a summer film, but ultimately it didn't do well at the box office. It would be nice to see a film like Bullet Train, which I thought was very action-packed and fun, do successfully well. I hope it does.
100%. Could not agree more. Luke, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the movies on my 2022 list that came out during the summer, and after Maverick, there's nothing too great except for Elvis, and then Bullet
that was great in its own right.
No, but Elvis isn't like a summer blockbuster, but it's still great. Other than that, you got Lightyear, which was disappointing. Thor wasn't very good.
No,
and now Bullet Train. And Nope hasn't released for us. It does this week. But yeah, it's just a bit meh, especially compared to next year, where you have Barbie, Oppenheimer, Mission Impossible, something else
the
probably.
Galaxy 3,
exactly.
Fast X. Like, yeah, no, that next summer
There's
is
a lot coming out next summer.
Yeah, the year in general of 2023 is going to be very, very satisfying in general. But yeah, I mean, you two basically took the words out of my mouth as far as it's like, yeah, it just feels like every single movie that's come out this year after Doctor Strange, which I'm not even going to say was like that great of a movie. I'll just say that was more of like an entertaining, fun waste of time with like a fun bunch of cameos in it. But it feels like every single movie that's come out this year, like you said, Luke, since Maverick, has just been like, oh, more and more and more disappointing. So you can imagine my surprise when we get a movie like this that seems to have everything that you could possibly want from a summer movie. Like I said, it's a big cast. It's got some crazy stunts. It's got some even more nutso action. It's got a gonzo plot that has a lot of different plot threads in order to keep track of. And it's just overall a fun movie. And you can imagine my surprise when the reception of this movie for the most part, is middling to negative. I mean, we all loved it. I think it's safe to say a lot of people that we know that we saw it with really enjoyed it. You know, I saw it with two people who had who probably laughed more at this movie than I think I've seen them laugh just at anything in general this year. So it's like, I guess the next question I have for you guys is, what is going on with the critics here? Like, we got a movie that's actually fun to watch, that's filled with action, that's filled with comedy, and every single review that I've heard about this from a quote-unquote professional is just negative. So, like, what's going on with the critics here?
I don't know. I feel like now we see this, like, part of it is like a generational thing. I think that's one thing, because now the critics are, I feel like most of the critics I follow are getting older. They don't see the same way we see film nowadays. I feel like that's one thing.
All right, Luke?
I don't know. Critics can be a real enigma sometimes. When I saw this at 50% on the tomato, I mean, 50?
You're like,
are we that negative on it?
Yeah, I'm like, I could get it if it was like maybe between like 60 and 70 or like, oh,
yeah.
that I'm like, okay, that would make sense. It's probably like 50. I'm like, that seems a little low.
It was questioning. I was like scratching my brain, like, okay, like, one critic said, "Oh, it never takes off anywhere. It stays. It never goes to the stop it wants."
That's another thing. Critics.
Like,
that's another thing. Critics got to stop. They got to stop. But they got to come up with those. They got to come up with better puns. Like that. That's cringy at least. That's just.
It's like even Ambulance. Like I think these are around the same level. But Ambulance has like what, a high 70? It's like the highest Michael Bay movie on there.
I'll tell you the big difference for me between those two movies. I thought that the plot for this one was, just for me at least, a lot more engaging and a lot more interesting to keep track of than Ambulance. For the most part, is kind of one track. It starts, and the intrigue and general interest of that movie comes to the fact that it just doesn't stop until it reaches its finale. But that movie, movie's pretty easy to keep track of. It has some pretty ludicrous things in it. This movie, at the very least, feels more charted out, feels more plotted out, and part of that helps based on the fact that it is an adaptation. I mean, Ambulance, remind me again, Luke, Ambulance is a remake of a foreign film, right?
I think it's a remake of a Danish film, but I couldn't find the Danish film, and I doubt that they took much.
They definitely
that there's an ambulance
aside from the title. Exactly. No, but yeah, so I guess we should probably get into like kind of what this movie is about, the plot of this movie. Bullet Train is based off of a novel by, hang on, I'm pulling up the I'm pulling up the novel right now that it's based off of. So it is based off of a Japanese novel by, oh man, I hate when I don't have this stuff pulled up already. So it's based off of a novel by Kotaro Isaka. And so it was adapted, from what I understand, it was originally going to be directed by Anton Fuqua, and it was originally going to have a much more serious tone to it, because apparently the book is a lot more, from what I've heard, is a lot more melodramatic than anything else. But basically, it ended up shifting hands. It ended up going through a lot of production shifts. David Leitch and Brad Pitt got their hands on it. And they basically tried to shift it and make it into a lot more of a comedy. And I personally think that was for the better, because a lot of the enjoyment that I got from this movie was just the overall, just kind of seemingly ridiculous, over-the-top, zany edges to it. I just felt like it added a lot more personality and flair to it. You know, David Leitch, to say the least, has had an interesting career as a director as well, where he started off as he was Brad Pitt's stuntman for years, which is something I just recently found out about. He's one of the two guys originally in the first John Wick, and then after Chad Stahelski kept making John Wick movies, David Leitch kind of went off and had a pretty interesting action career over the last couple of years. You know, he did Atomic Blonde following up John Wick. He did Deadpool 2, which I still think is in parts better than the first one. The only only a parts, but the only miss for me on his career so far has been the Hobbs and Shaw remake. But that one I don't necessarily attribute to him, because the action in that movie still kicks ass. And now you have this movie that he does, and I can probably say that this is probably the first movie that he's made that actually feels like more of like a unique vision of his, because it's not it's his first project since Atomic Blonde. It's not a sequel. It is an adaptation, but it delves very much so into like the pulp realm. Basically, it's following Brad Pitt's character Ladybug, who's an assassin that's just kind of come out of therapy and is assigned to retrieve a briefcase from a bullet train that's on its way from Tokyo to Kyoto in Japan, and basically comes to discover that there are several other assassins on the train, each with different varying agendas, and he basically discovers that something else is going on that he was not privy to and aware of. And I can say, starting right off the bat, just as far as my overall general thoughts before we get into some spoilers, is that I mean, the immediate first thought is, I'm like, this is basically like the 2020s version of what a Tarantino movie would look like, in the sense of where it's ironic, because the first sentence that I wrote in my review for this on Letterboxd, this is basically if you took Brad Pitt's character from True Romance, which is originally a Tarantino script, by the way, and basically as also one of the only survivors of that movie too, and basically put him into like a modern day action Tarantino-esque script. And you would think that wouldn't necessarily work, but it works amazingly well, where his whole thing throughout the movie is he's just like, yeah, I'm trying to avoid violence, I'm trying to keep things zen, he's constantly trying to get get off the train. He's like, wrong place, wrong time. He's not even supposed to be there. He's filling in for another assassin who we later find out is played by in a hilarious cameo. And it's one of those like kind of unintentional protagonists. I forget what like the specific story structure word is, but it just makes his dynamics playing off of the various different colorful assassins that are on the train just so much fun, so entertaining, and so engaging. And I definitely think that a character like that is needed for a plot this dense, because as fun as this movie is, the plot is very, very dense, and there are a lot of moving pieces, and you definitely have to pay attention in order to kind of just make sure that you're not missing anything, because if you miss it, this is one of the few movies that if you miss even one segment, you will be completely lost. But I don't know, what are your guys' general thoughts on this movie?
I think just stemming off of what you just said, I think this is the coolest part about this movie. It felt like a puzzle to me to figure out which assassin connected into unique ways. And I think that what made part of this film stand out, and I think what draw a lot of people away from it, because there's so much to pay attention to. There's a lot of pieces to connect to. And with each assassin, I felt what David Leitch did really well with this is that he made each character very uniquely different and each person and very engaging to interact with. That's the one thing I really liked. And
that's a good point. And I actually think that might be a thing that, like I said, if we're talking about like kind of the generational divide between kind of critics of old versus critics of new, I definitely know that when it comes to people more so our age, we have a lot higher of a tolerance of movies that like can be a little bit quote unquote overcomplicated, because again, just because of our brains, we like kind of, being able to piece things together and figure things out. And I feel that was something that back in the day was a lot more of a harder sell, which is why you didn't see as many movies try to do that. But for me at least, yeah, that was part of the fun, was watching and trying to figure out all the pieces as they were like kind of unfolding, and as far as like kind of how they all ended up connecting to this kind of one final boss that they had to take out at the end.
And each, character that showed up, each cameo got so much better and better and better and better. Like, I could not believe who I was seeing every time who showed up. And I was like, oh my God, this person also worked with David Leitch. This person, didn't work with David Leitch, but this person is still awesome. Like, I was ready to flip, like I said in my review on my TikTok, I was ready to flip my seat, because I was just like so mind blown what they were able to do with this film and who they were able to connect and bring on with.
I'm surprised that Kevin Hart didn't pop up at one point.
Honestly.
I will say, it's like of all the cameos they got, there are a lot of cameos. We're going to break that down in a bit. But yeah, I'm surprised. I'm like, yeah, they got Kevin Hart just pop up for a random shtick in Hobbs and Shaw. But I guess The Rock wasn't here. So I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. That why Kevin Hart wouldn't be here. Luke, what were your general overall thoughts on Bullet Train?
Yeah, I've been excited for this movie ever since it was announced. Like, action movie from David Leitch starring Brad Pitt called Bullet Train. Okay, that's all I need to know. Yeah. I'm in. You know me, I like my fast moving vehicles.
That you do.
As we know. Then the trailer dropped. I thought, oh, this isn't exactly what I was expecting. It's a lot more comedic, but still looks really good. And then I saw the trailer 900 more times before every single movie, and Craven, the trailer for Craven can't be too far, so I'm sure that's gonna replace it.
Yep.
Like this replaced Morbius, and I just absolutely loved it. It looked like a movie tailored to me. I love just a good fun action movie, and it completely delivered. I think the characters and how unique they all are was my favorite part. I wouldn't say the action was like groundbreaking or anything, but I don't think it needed to be, as long as it's having fun. The comedy was great. Of course, the surprise cameos were brilliant. The last one, it couldn't have been anyone else in all of Hollywood if they tried.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good. It was so good. And that one, it's like, yeah, again, if you've been paying attention to David Leitch's filmography, specifically his last two movies, you can kind of figure out what the last came is good, but it just made it that much more glorious when it actually happened. I like your point that you brought up about the action in the sense of where it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's one of those senses where it didn't need to be, because what this movie does that, again, movies of old used to do is that it was very economical. It doesn't, and that's the thing that I've liked about the John Wick movies and a lot of David Leitch's other movies and a lot of like the modern day action movies that I think do it right, is they don't need to depend on these grandiose, over the top CG filled action spectacles. The thing that they've gotten, I think, real and done really well is they're very economical about making good use of their space, just making sure that the audience can keep track of what's going on in each action set piece. And I think this movie does this masterfully in spades. And as far as balancing out the action of the comedy, and just the little sight gags too, where I think one of my favorite gags is where Brad Pitt opens the door while he's on the phone with his handler, which is another surprise cameo that pops up at the end. Aaron Taylor Johnson shows up the phone, reveals that he's tracking him because he's using Brian Tyree Henry's phone. They fight into like the service area, and then they pause. And you would think it's gonna be like one of those brief pauses as like she comes through, and then it immediately resumes. No, they stop for like 5 minutes just to have this back and forth. Right before Brad Pitt finishes his water bottle, the girl from The Boys walks out and he chucks the water bottle, decks Aaron Taylor Johnson.
That's in the trailer too, and
yeah, it is
that little moment.
So that's not necessarily
really
a spoiler, but it's so good. It's moments like that where I'm like, we used to get this in movies all the time. Like, why can't we get this in every movie now? It was hilarious to say the least. And like I said, I mean, if you want to just break down some of the characters that we have in this movie, besides Brad Pitt's Ladybug character, you have a pair of assassins that are known collectively as the twins, portrayed by Brian Tyree Henry and Aaron Taylor Johnson, known collectively as Lemon and Tangerine. You have a child assassin known as the Prince, portrayed by Joey King, whose whole modus operandi is she poses as, a prissy, prim little schoolgirl who is super deadly. There is a Japanese assassin who is on the train looking for somebody who pushed his son off of a mall building. That is kind of revealed in the opening scene of the movie. And then as the movie unfolds, you are introduced to just way more assassins it's just like, oh, you thought that 4 was great. How about we throw in 6? How about we throw in 8? They just keep piling more and more and more on top of it. Like Bad Bunny shows up, has this entire montage. Zazie Beetz pops up and like a random thing out of nowhere, and it's one of those things where it's like you would think that it would just get so completely overloaded. But it's like you said, Kristen, the way that they are able to incorporate each and every single progressive new person into the plot and how they're all able to make it connect at the end, it makes you interested as far as like, okay, so I don't feel like I'm being overloaded, even though there's just a lot of stuff that's going on here, So my next question for you guys is, what was probably your favorite specific sequence in the movies? And I don't say this about a lot because, again, there aren't a lot of movies now where it's like, yeah, they're just every single sequence is just so fun and entertaining that you can pick. Because I'm like, I can list 5 off the top of my head just as much as but yeah.
Luke, I'll let you go first this time.
I think I can't point out one specific, but I think my favorite was towards the beginning where just Brad Pitt and Aaron Taylor Johnson and Brian Tyree Henry are sort of chasing each other slowly, trying to figure out what's really going on, and it's just these actors exchanging these great moments. And for me, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Brian Tyree Henry were the absolute MVPs of the film. Like
100%.
I would definitely like to see a spin-off of those.
Yes.
Why not? Why not? They'll make anything these days.
They could. They literally could.
They both had this great chemistry together, and it reminded me of like the connection of like The Nice Guys.
Yeah.
Where I was so engaged by them, and they just worked and well played off each other, like that good cop, bad cop vibe, but like good, bad cop assassin.
And it's funny, the Thomas the Tank Engine bit that Brian Tyree Henry's character does, you would think is one of those things that would get annoying after a while, but how they keep just bringing it back over and over and over again. It
works
great.
well with the story and what it wants to tell. It adds that goofiness to it, but it makes sense given Brian Tyree Henry's character and how just fun and just not so much over the top, but like make him likable, in a way.
And even how they bring that back around.
Do you guys have Thomas over there?
Yes, we do.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. We grew up with Thomas.
I was like, maybe that's why the critics don't like it. They don't know who Thomas is, but evidently they do.
How they bring that back around and have that like be this emotional send off when Brian Tyree Henry sees Aaron Taylor Johnson's dead body. Spoiler alert. Fair warning. There was a lot of death, and oh man, I'm still trying to figure out like what my favorite death in the movie is because there were so many great sight gags in this movie. I mean, we'll definitely have to like go down the list as far as like what our favorite sight gag was in the movie. But I also think one of my favorite lines was at the end when he was like when he was trying to drive the train out, and he was like, "Wait, you can't drive it?" He's like, "No, because Thomas the Train Engine is like what I thought you loved Thomas the Train Engine." He's like, "Thomas is a metaphor for love, not an instruction manual." I thought that was great.
That's really,
like I said, it's so self-aware of itself. It's so fun. It's so engaging. Like every character and every actor involved is just having an absolute blast. Like I don't know, like did you guys have a favorite actor per se other than like to take aside the characters? Did you guys have like a favorite actor or a favorite performance overall?
Has to be Aaron Taylor Johnson for me. I saw someone a critic like that wasn't too fond of the movie call him like character from a Guy Ritchie anime.
I 100%
I think
agree.
that's a positive.
I mean, that's
Like,
100% correct.
Like, I heard she's great too
Positive.
as a director.
Why is that a negative? Like,
I don't know. I enjoyed it. I think it worked. The mustache is absolutely glorious.
Oh,
That
it's
it's
great.
mustache summer season. So
bring back great movie mustaches. Like,
I mean, we got Miles Teller doing it. Now we can have Aaron Taylor Johnson doing it. Why
and
not?
Evans as well.
yeah, Evans as well. Yeah, it's hey, your favorite movie of the year. No,
Exactly.
But like, Aaron Taylor Johnson's had such a weird career because obviously, again, he kind of breaks out in the mid 2000s in his teen years, doing a bunch of kid movies. Then he does Nowhere Boy and Kick-Ass in the same year in 2000. And then in the mid 2010s, he tries to get into the blockbuster phase with, I would say, two kind of lackluster performances and two otherwise pretty good movies in Godzilla and Age of Ultron. And he spent the last couple of years doing some really weird indie off the beaten track
But
movies.
they're great.
He had a brief cameo appearance in Tenet, but I mean, his performance in here is just so satisfying because I feel like it's the performance that he should have been playing a while ago, which is where he finally gets to portray like the gruff British asshole assassin who's just perpetually pissed off at everything and is cursing every other word. And the dynamic that forms with Brian Tyree Henry, who I did not think was going to be able to pull off a compelling British accent, but somehow surprisingly does. I'm like, this is the role that Aaron Taylor Johnson was born to play. Now,
yeah.
I want to pivot a bit and talk about Joey King's character because even though there are a lot of parts in this movie, the primary four, it's Brad Pitt, Brian Tyree Henry, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Joey King. And Joey King, I'll say that she's good in the movie. In hindsight, I don't know if I like her as much as everyone else, simply for the fact that her whole role is kind of, she doesn't, even though she is still clearly having just as much fun as everyone else, I feel like her role, she doesn't get, her character is kind of wrapped in mystery and is kind of used as a plot device character in order to make certain things happen. Like there's a lot of machinations behind the scenes that she's kind of responsible for engineering and kind of how that results once they finally kind of reach the big bad at the end and how that adds up where she's kind of the one thing that wasn't supposed to be there as far as the big bad's overall plan. Like, I don't know. What were your guys' thoughts on her character?
I think she did fine with her performance. I liked her more than a lot of other films she has starred in, given her career.
Yeah.
I mean, forget the kissing booth. I mean, this, I felt she delivered on most of the parts, but I completely agree. She was morely used as a plot device to keep the connections of the story going, but I didn't find her as that threatening.
Right. Like it's weird because the movie is constantly seeming to build up as like, oh, she's using like the proper polite schoolgirl appearance as a facade, and that she actually is this badass kick-ass assassin, but she's really not. She tases a guy. She
threatens the guy with the
she threatens the guy.
tie.
She shoots a guy once, and then it turns out later on that wasn't even effective because he was wearing a bulletproof vest, and then. And then like the most of the time she's just like pretending to be like this innocent schoolgirl, and then they kind of just let her get away because it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, I feel like she should be a lot more threatening because she's constantly building herself up as being threatening, but then she's not, and then it results in the end of like yet another hilarious sight gag. So I don't know, like if there was like kind of one part of the movie that I didn't like, which again, that there's very few and far between. I pretty much liked every single part of the movie. Like, I don't know, I would probably say that was her one part, But hey, she was the one that drew in Hiroyuki Sanada at the end and gave us one of the most badass samurai fights, action set pieces at the end that we've gotten this year.
I think I would have liked a little bit more action from her, like at least a fight scene.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. Luke, what's your take on Joey King?
Yeah, she wasn't exactly the most engaging part of the film, but I think how she fits in, and she has that one scene with Michael Shannon at the end, which I thought was decent. Like, she's not my favorite part of the movie, but I definitely wouldn't take her out.
Yeah,
agree. Yeah, maybe potentially.
I think it's a nice contrast.
Yeah, maybe potentially recast her with like another actress that like we know. Like strangely enough, like I feel like weirdly enough, Haley Steinfeld in that part, like that part is like superstar because Haley Steinfeld is somebody that we know. I think the biggest difference comes down to the fact that Joey King is not an action actress. Like we have not seen her compellingly in an action movie, at least not that I've seen. Versus Haley Steinfeld, we know can pull off action on that level.
Now, she was Joey King was in a film that was released almost about a month ago called The Princess on Hulu. So I haven't watched that yet. And there's some action going on with that there with some sword fighting. So I'll give her credits on that. I haven't seen it. So maybe she just miss the mark on here to
Right.
miss her fight scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be in the script too, as well. Like that could also not be a character that's designed to have a lot of action set pieces. It is more so, you know, she is more so kind of like the seductress role, if anything else. You know, I mean, again, that's probably based right in the written text. But I don't know. Like I said, that was just the one part where I'm like, yeah, I wish we could have gotten a little bit more of that. So I guess without further ado, I mean, that pretty much brings us to I guess kind of the spoilers for the third act. Like I said, we talked about it. Like I said, there's a lot of character deaths. I mean, as far as the cameos go, like the Bad Bunny and Zazie Beetz characters, I thought those were just both hilarious. They were quick inserts, in, out, boom. They got killed super quickly. I'm still because Brad Pitt kills both of those guys. I'm still trying to figure out which kill I liked more. When the Bad Bunny throws the knife and it bounces off the suitcase and hits him in the chest, or when Zazie Beetz tries to poison him, and then she pulls out her anti-poison, he just grabs it, jabs his neck with it, and then she slowly dies, like, viciously and horribly in front of it. It's hilarious.
It's great.
But
they both serve their action sequences really, really well.
So I guess, so in order to kind of summarize what the third act of this movie is, so basically it's revealed throughout the movie, it's been hinted at that all of these assassins are traveling towards this one assassin called the White Death in Kyoto, who has basically risen to the top and taken over this Yakuza faction in Japan. He's apparently, I don't remember if they said he was like Russian or Swedish or something, and he basically came over and took over this Yakuza organization from the centerpiece. And basically what's revealed is that all of these assassins that are on the train all essentially unintentionally took part in like kind of spurning him. Like there are multiple instances and hints and earlier in the movie that his wife died in a vicious car accident. His son actually is a character early in the movie portrayed by Logan Lerman who dies viciously and horribly. I don't even think before like the 20 or 30 minute mark. There's also rumors about like a surgeon that is revealed to have been like operating on his wife who was poisoned by Zazie Beetz' character. And essentially what's happened is that the Michael Shannon's character, the White Death, has drawn them all to this train in order to have them systematically killed off one by one because they've all kind of spurned him. The twins, Brian Tyree Henry and Aaron Taylor Johnson, slaughtered his crew in Bolivia. What's it called? Oh man, who am I drawing a blank on? The Hornet poisoned the cardiovascular surgeon who was supposed to be operating on his wife based on the accident that she was in. And the coup de grace that's revealed at the end is the fact, and like I said, this is very spoiler heavy, so if you have not watched this movie, turn away, is the fact that the assassin who killed his wife, who was trying to kill him, was the assassin who Brad Pitt replaced on the mission on the train, because Brad Pitt is saying throughout the entire movie that he was a replacement for another assassin called Carver, who is portrayed in a one-off cameo by Ryan Reynolds, who is the assassin that killed his wife. And so it turns this movie into a classic, oh man, case of mistaken identity, where Brad Pitt, once he realizes, it's like, wait a minute, I'm not Carver. And it leads to one of my favorite gags in the third act before inevitably kind of, you know, he ends up getting shot by his own, by a, I don't even remember what it was. It's like a gun, but with like a reverse kinetic energy where the gun explodes and the bullet goes backwards and shoots you instead of you. But I don't know. Like, what were your guys' take on just kind of where this movie went in the final kind of third act catharsis of the movie?
Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. I mean, the cameos, like you said, that Ryan Reynolds cameo that was being built up it was so satisfying, you know, because it felt like it was so earned. And knowing that his character picked like almost the wrong day to call in sick to send in Brad Pitt. It's great.
And also like them kind of unintentionally just taking shots at Ryan Reynolds where it's like, yeah, we know this guy's super popular, but they're like, yeah, he's kind of a dick, you know? And then and the crazy part is
it brings in the Deadpool vibes. That's why it works.
And like we never see any other than that one scene where it's revealed that he was the one that pulled it up. We never see any other scene, so we only have Brad Pitt's word to go based off of, and it's hilarious. I don't know, Luke, what were your thoughts on that last act and that last minute reveal?
It was getting a little long. I'm like, oh, I thought it was ending, but we have a whole nother act left. And I think that's a criticism that I've seen around this movie. Actually, I've seen that criticism a lot lately. Like, are we just getting 20 minutes too long?
Which is crazy because this movie's 2 hours. Like,
exactly.
It has the perfect runtime.
It's the perfect runtime. It's not too short. It's not too long. So like, it's not even like most of the movies I see now are like 2 hours and 12 minutes, 2 hours
36 minutes.
Yeah, this movie's a nice tight to like 126 minutes. Like it's not even that long. So
but yeah, I love the third act. When they started moving the train again, that really ticked off my brain. Like, oh yes, fast vehicle action. And then it crashed into another bullet train ahead of it, and that was
awesome.
That looked spectacular. and then the whole thing crashed, and then Brad Pitt went flying backwards, and he fell into the
giant plush doll.
I really thought that Karen Fukuhara was gonna climb out of it.
Me
the
too.
End. Like,
Me too.
Where did she go? Where did
so
she
sad.
go? Where did she
Oh
go?
man,
She
that
was so great. I wanted more of her. Like I
Yeah.
love the little interactive scene with, you just discussed earlier with the water bottle. I wish she
man.
had some more because I know she would have really kicked some butt in this film.
Yeah, and I mean, just the detail that this movie goes through, just how you have the tracking shot of the water bottle, everything that it's gone to at the end. Also, I'll give this movie credit because this movie takes the concept of a Pavlov's gun and runs with it. Because between, I mean, the sleeping powder and the water bottle, the reverse gun at the end, what's it called, the plush doll at the end. I mean, there's so many different like kind of little devices that are added at the beginning of the movie that you don't give like a second thought to, that just end up coming back in the absolute best way possible. I love some of the kills in the third act as well, where they just got so creative with it, where it's like they ended up what's it called, I'm trying to remember, where it's like they ended up just like shooting at everyone. And I almost forgot too that this movie also has a post-credit scene that is just when you think the movie's done and the craziness is ended, they have one more like kind of cherry on top of this delicious ice cream sundae that you just finished. And I won't spoil that because I will say that is one thing where it's like, yeah, you guys should definitely stay around and reward yourselves for. But it was just it was majestic. It was absolutely,
it was a good way to
hilarious.
end it.
It was absolutely amazing. So I wanted to pivot now into our next point, which is kind of, we've talked a lot about the movie and everything that we've loved about it. So what I wanted to kind of pose next is how this kind of brings back the fun of ensemble action movies of old, and kind of my earlier comparison to some of Quentin Tarantino's earlier movies is that the thing that I feel like we loved about like every Tarantino movie that he made in the early 90s between Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and a lot of kind of the later, there were a ton, the rest of the 90s was littered with movies that were like based, like blatantly ripping off Tarantino, like 2 Days in the Valley, Oliver Stone's U-Turn, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, a whole litany of movies that were just blatantly ripping off Tarantino. And I'll say that this movie doesn't blatantly rip him off, but like there are definitely like kind of signs here where it's like, just like a bunch of different colorful characters, one kind of confined setting, a bunch of crazy action. They're not all necessarily going to get along. So my question for you guys is, how do you think this movie complements kind of some of those previous ensemble action movies? And do you think that this kind of adds anything new of note to that?
Luke, do you want to go? It's okay.
I'll try something. Yeah, before this, I was thinking, we need a bullet train right about now. It feels like we haven't had anything like this in a while. And right off the top of my head, I can't really think of any other action ensemble movies. But I think
it's been a while. Probably the last one that I can think of is probably Tropic Thunder, which is crazy because that was 14 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think this takes all the great tropes that you might have in those movies and just like puts it in a modern day, in a modern setting, with like the modern humor, and it's just something to appeal to modern audiences. And hopefully this inspires more of this caliber movie, which I would love to see.
Yeah.
From David Leitch or anyone else. Just
Yeah, make more of these types of movies. I couldn't agree more, because again, these are some of my favorite movies of all time. Have been movies that kind of fall into this category. Movies with a big cast that utilizes every cast member in a really interesting and fun way, and just has an absolutely bonkers and ridiculous premise that just carries you through the whole movie as far as action goes. Kristen, what's your take on that?
I completely agree with what you guys just had to say. Honestly, it just reminds me of like, if we're talking like comedy ensemble, is that what you're alluding to?
Comedy, action ensemble. It falls a little bit into both.
Yeah, because it just makes you think about like, okay, how does it do it like compared to like an MCU film or like, but I love the fact that it really works well with its tropes and brings in inspiration from other directors. Like it makes me think of like what a lot of critics are saying, like a Guy Ritchie film, and it just utilizes everything so well. I mean, it did what it wanted to do, I think.
Yeah, like Guy Ritchie's another guy that's often been compared as like kind of being the British Tarantino, where Guy Ritchie kind of popped up like immediately after what's it called, after Tarantino was like really making his bones, because like Tarantino comes up in like the early to mid 90s, and then Guy Ritchie makes Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels in 99. A couple others, Matthew Vaughn to a certain extent, although not as much, because Matthew Vaughn has made more so genre comic book adaptation fare.
Right.
But yeah, like I said, it's just I guess the final consensus is just make more movies like this, make more action ensemble movies with a big cast, with a great premise that just gives us a boatload of jokes, some great connective tissue. Because that's the other thing too, like I said, is that kind of that puzzle piece, kind of like plot device metric that you were talking about before, Kristen. That's something that was made famous by Tarantino movies. The fact that in Pulp Fiction we were following this briefcase across all of these different storylines, and we were like trying to kind of connect the dots as far as like, okay, how does this line up here? How does this connect to this? You know, like that's the sort of thing where it's like, the movies to me, some of the best movies that I've really enjoyed, they have kind of like that plot device metric where that constantly keeps you suckered in as time goes on. A lot of people, I feel like, have mistaken that and have tried to use that as a gimmick. You know, we've obviously seen how the MCU has kind of capitalized on that, where it's just like, oh, it's the thing that everyone's trying to get to, and it's if you get to it, it's going to explode and it's going to cause something crazy, and that's not at all the case here. It's so delightfully old-fashioned in that sense. I feel like if Chris were here, I feel like a point that he would bring up that he has brought up a lot previously is, again, these guys did their homework. They definitely researched the types of movies that they were trying to reference here, and they very vehemently were trying to do the best they could to both homage that and pay homage to that and give something new and fresh and original that was their own take.
And I'm very curious to know what Tarantino thinks of this film, because I know he's going to see this. Because he, with him, and he loves to see all the latest films. He's like one of those directors, loves to see anything. And I'm so curious to know what his thoughts are. Even Guy Ritchie, I would love to know what their thoughts are.
Absolutely. Because I would be interested to see if they think they're like, oh, wow, this is actually like pretty fun and fresh and original, or if they thought, wow, this is kind of blatantly ripping off our movie, or like just kind of what new, fresh and inventive takes that they would come up with that. Yeah. What's it called? So like I said, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter review. We're almost we're pretty much running short on time here. But the only other thing that I really wanted to bring up before we got out of here is the fact that kind of obviously what we wonder what this movie's box office is going to be, because it's been roughly almost a month now since Thor: Love and Thunder came out. There haven't been any other major blockbuster IP movies that have come out since, and there are, aside from Jordan Peele's Nope, but again, that was an original idea, so I don't necessarily know how that counts as an IP. And we're not getting another major IP release exclusively in theaters until Black Adam at the end of October, because Halloween Ends. I don't remember if that's opening simultaneously on Peacock this year as it was last year.
They didn't say right now, but right now it's going to theaters.
Okay, so in that case, I guess until Halloween ends. So we're not getting another major blockbuster IP like release based off something until Halloween ends in Black Adam at the end of October. And also the fact that August is going to be the first month, I believe, this entire year where we actually get a new movie release in theaters every single weekend. We're getting Bodies next weekend. Then the weekend after that, we're getting Idris Elba's Beast. We're also getting that fall movie, I believe, coming out next year. And then we're wrapping up the month of August with The Invitation, that upcoming corny-looking vampire movie, and George Miller's 3,000 Years of Love. So do you guys think that this could potentially signify a more positive shift both in the overall box office, which I think has still been pretty low this year, despite everyone trying to like kind of metric out and say, oh, the box office is returning? Do you guys think this signifies more of a positive upward shift, and that this could be the return of people to movie theaters finally?
Well, Maverick's still making money somehow.
Yeah.
Like, given how long it's been out, like I check my theater, like people are still seeing Maverick.
Yeah, people are still going to see that on my end.
And then this looks like, hey, you want to go to those movies? Yeah, what's out? Oh, there's this action movie, Bullet Train.
It's like
Brad Pitt. Oh yeah, let's go watch Brad Pitt beat up some people.
Yeah, it's like a good matinee film. Like, I would recommend this over a lot of movies that are currently out for the summer. So it's a great film. I really did enjoy it for what it was worth, and I think we could see it increase from it. I was reading an article that's saying that like, oh, it could bring in like 60 million or over the weekend or something like that. So I think, though, I don't see this bringing in, at least the first weekend, bringing in about between 30 or 40 million, at least here, or or all over.
It's one of those movies where it just feels like it's like anybody could just watch this and enjoy it, because it feels like the barrier of entry for a lot of movies now has just become so high, where it's like, oh, this movie you're only going to see it because it's this IP, or because it's related to this person director wise, or because it's got like, it's so rare now, I feel like, where you can just get a movie that it's like, okay, what is it? It's a bunch of guys, it's on a fast moving train, and they're all trying to kill each other. Like,
Right.
remember when every movie used to be that? When every movie, it was just a simple premise. And I feel like you have all these higher up bigwigs in Hollywood that are constantly wringing their hands as far as like, oh, what can we put out in theaters that will actually make money? And it's like, if you just do stuff like this, if you just continue to put out stuff like this, like, I got to check the budget, but I don't believe that this movie has a particularly high budget, aside from obviously for the pay for all the stars. Again,
Well, it was a COVID-made movie, so
Yeah.
it was
COVID-made
all
movie, so
in a soundstage. So
exactly.
Yeah.
it got
That makes
expensive.
That was the only thing. I wish they had like on location shooting, because the effects in this, like the background stuff, you can tell it was like filmed on a soundstage. It didn't work for me like on that, because I wish they had on location shooting. Sorry, I wanted to step off that.
That's an interesting point though, because I will say that was something that did not bother me at all. Like, there were points where I'm like, this is probably on a soundstage, but I was just so suckered into the story that I didn't even register on my brain.
Is
That's
that
an
more
interesting
like
point.
Just
at
like
the
when
end?
they cut to the outside sequences, like
Yeah, the outside sequences on the train were pretty blatantly CG. So.
Yeah, but otherwise everything else in it I was fine with. Like when there's like a scene when Aaron Taylor Johnson and like Brad Pitt are outside, and you could just tell it's not the best, CGI. Yeah. That's the only thing. But otherwise it worked well and everything else though.
Yeah, like the scenes
CGI.
with Aaron Taylor Johnson at the end of the train when he runs up and jumps and he starts punching. I'm like, okay, that's pretty obviously a green screen.
That was the only thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Look, were you gonna say anything else?
No, but afterwards I just checked out of curiosity how fast the average bullet train goes, and it's like trying to convert to miles. It's like 200 miles an hour.
Dang.
So so what you're saying is that there's no possible way that Taylor Johnson would have been able to land on that train as it was taking off, and somehow stay on the train in order to like punch through the glass in order to get through it.
Without the mustache, yes, but with the mustache, he has.
Yes.
With the mustache, that gave him like that.
He needed
extra
those
boost he
Quicksilver skills. He needed
exactly.
those.
Hey, maybe if he had the mustache in Age of Ultron, maybe he would have been able to avoid, being shot to death. I'm sorry, I'm never gonna forgive him. You cannot tell me that 1 year earlier you have Evan Peters moving faster than the speed of light, being able to move bullets out of the way, and Aaron Taylor Johnson goes in front and uses his body as a shield for Hawkeye. It's like, just move him out of the way. Like, this is not hard. I don't know. Just blatantly obvious that they needed to kill him off for Wanda's emotional development there. But hey, that checked off our Marvel quota for this review. But yeah, overall, I think the general consensus that we can come to is that this movie was just an overall blast. Heavily recommended. Fun for the whole family. You can even take your smallest 10-year-old to this movie, and they'll be able to
know about
enjoy
that.
it.
Even how bloody it is in some parts.
I'd take my 12-year-old.
It's a good. Yeah, take your 12-year-old. Yeah, all of us here.
I was always told that the blood was just ketchup in movies. So that's what I was told.
Take your 12-year-old that you had when you were like 10 years old. But no, but yeah, I mean, this movie does get pretty gory, but I feel like for the most part, like, I feel like the gore is pretty confined. And like, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's kind of like Deadpool, where in the sense of where it's like the action feels overtly cartoony. So even though it's like, and because everyone is like not quote unquote taking it seriously, that's the wrong word to use, but because it is so fast and loose and fun, I don't know, it's one of those instances where it's like I feel like the R rating needs to be kind of more drastically redefined, as far as like, to me there is a definitive difference between blood and gory action that is very clearly overtly fun and comic booky, and blood and gore for like things that are like a lot more serious and like deafening. But I don't know, that might just be me. As
maybe
far
it
as
was the language.
I think the language. I was just gonna say they have that, PG. You can have that one F word in the PG.
That's true.
movie.
Yeah, they were fair
Don't
about
tell
it.
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
I don't know. I don't know. I might just, like I said, I'm just sympathetic because I'm like, yes, finally a fun movie that is made for adults as well. Well, semi-adults. I don't know. That's just me. So our final thoughts, overall star ratings, and as far as like, would you definitely recommend watching Bullet Train? Kristen, let's start with you.
A star rating?
Yeah, final thoughts and star ratings.
Okay, so if we're talking stars, I give it like a 3.5 out of 5, 7.5 out of 10. I gave it a B plus because I like to grade my, not B plus, a B. Given how I grade my films, I give them like from an A to F scale, so I've given it a B. So it's fun. Perfect for summer.
Lower than I thought it would be. Very interesting. Luke, your final thoughts and star rating.
Maybe a 4 out of 5.
I think just out of how much I had fun with it, I itched it up to a 4.5 out of
Yes.
5.
Wow.
Yes.
When I rewatch it, it will inevitably drop to a 4, but that doesn't matter.
See, it's funny. I saw this movie. I think this is the first movie since The Batman that I actually saw twice in theaters opening weekend. I saw it once on Thursday, and I saw it again on Friday with my friends because that's how much fun I had with this movie. It was a 4 when I saw it originally, and I have since pushed it up to a 4.5 out of 5. This is just such a boatload of fun, such a blast, so funny. The action is great. I mean, it's everything you could want from a movie. Like, I really, again, it's coming back to the critics' point. I do not understand what it is that the critics do not like about this movie. You know, I think we can just attribute that to it's just, man, the critics, they really don't know anything. You know, you just gotta go in and make your own opinion. But hey, will this movie be the return to fun movie theater viewing that we've been hoping for all year? We're only going to be able to find out as the rest of the month of August goes on, as we transition away from the summer into the fall. Kristen, Luke, I wanted to thank you guys so much for coming on to this podcast. This was an absolute blast. Real quick before we go, plug yourselves. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs? Kristen, starting with you.
Okay, you guys can follow me on Instagram at Ms.Filmingo. I'm sure my links will be somewhere, right? If not, that's okay. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Ms.Filmingo, on Twitter at KFilmingo, and I write for a couple different websites. And you can catch me on the MK Productions podcast. And you were just on to talk Jordan Peele, which we had a lot of fun.
We had a lot of fun. That shit went on for 3 hours, and I loved every single minute of it. It was great.
That was the longest I think we had in a while. So it was a lot of fun. Luke, we have to get you on at some point because
I would love that.
Because I know like we've been in passing. I would love to have you on because you also have some great thoughts. So yeah, really enjoyed being on here. Thank you so much. And because I know we were talking about this movie for a while, just you and I talking about it in the DMs, and now here we got to talk about it. It was great. Thank you so much for having me.
So much fun. Like I said, you're welcome back anytime on. Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Nowadays, I mostly leech off other people's channels, but on occasion, you can find me on Instagram at Luke_reviews and on Letterboxd.
Oh, man,
very active day on Letterboxd.
That's one of the greatest plugs I think I've ever heard in general. So I don't even necessarily know if I can top that. But you can follow me at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. Be sure to follow the official Talkin' TV podcast across all platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. New episodes are uploaded every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts of the Talkin' TV podcast. And as always, people, for myself, Luke, Kristen, 12 seasons in a short film. I'd watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.